Here are all 12 of the Series 26 Space Minifigures. We'll be exploring the universe as we create scenes for all of them and capture them on camera. Let's get started. Our first minifigure is the spacewalking astronaut, and I wanted this photo to be set on the moon, so we've used some fine dark grey rocks for the surface, as well as some craft wire with blue tack to hold our astronaut up in the air. I did the same with a few rocks around him to give it that low gravity effect. Lastly, we'll just hop onto Photoshop, remove the craft wire, and then we'll have a great finished photo. Next up is the alien tourist, and I want them to be visiting the beach, so we're just laying down some sand here. We've also got a nice sea to sky background. I'm going to put in place a little palm tree because it's giving us that Caribbean vibe, and then if you've ever been to a beach, you will know that there are tiny annoying pieces of grass that do occasionally poke out the sand, as well as little pieces of seaweed for you to step on. Lastly, I want our little alien to be meeting the nice friendly neighbourhood hermit crab. Let's see how it comes out. Next up is the imposter, and I've gone for a very simple setup here because I want to focus more on the story. If you own this minifigure or you don't own this minifigure, you may have noticed he has a very robotic smile to him. That's because if you swivel his head around, you'll notice a tiny green alien controlling the minifigure. So this story is all about those tiny little aliens constructing their first minifigure before they go and invade a local planet and take it over. Onto the flying saucer costume now, which means we're going back to space. I wanted the minifigure to be reaching out, trying to grab hold of their head, almost as if it had popped off and just flown away for a little bit of sightseeing. Again, we've made use of the craft wire for some floating rocks around him, and we're putting in a bigger rock just for an added piece for the background. Our next minifigure is the Ice Planet Explorer, which means things could get pretty cold, but thankfully they won't because we are using fake snow. Warning, it does get everywhere. As you can see in the background, we're using a very thick layer, which was to cover up the ugly base plates of the trees. However, when the final image came out, it also gave it a nice effect, so it's kind of a win-win really. Next, we're going to add our minifigure in place, being followed by a few robotic penguins, and lastly, to finish off the scene, I wanted a few pieces of grass to be sprouting through the snow. Moving on is our robot butler, and again this is a very simple scene. I've used the kitchen counter from the jazz club, placing a few pies on the work surfaces. Next to it we have a nice bouquet of flowers, as well as our bin filled with bananas, and lastly putting in our robot butler's pet cat. So we're now onto our retro space heroine, and for this scene I want her to be in a lovely, beautiful, vibrant park, taking the dog for a walk. As you can see, she is attached to some craft wire, just jumping for joy. We're adding in a few pieces of foliage, including a nice tree in the background accompanied by a bush, and then we're going to sprinkle a few flowers around just before we take the picture. Next up is our M-Tron powerlifter, which does mean we're going back to space, landing on the moon, where we have used the nice dark grey rocks as the surface. As you can see, we've got the M-Tron figure positioned to go and pick up the accessory that's provided with the minifigure. We have a few floating rocks around him as well, and for any eagle-eyed viewers, you may have noticed that I'm actually missing one of the accessories on the minifigure. Don't worry, I have found it in the spare parts box, so that will be reattached. Just won't be in this video, unfortunately. Lastly, we've just been adding in a few rocks in the background and foreground before we capture the scene. It's now time to explore the life of an alien Beetlezoid, and this minifigure comes with a very cool accessory, these bright purple berries, and I thought it would be very cool to explore how these berries grow and how they're harvested on the planet that this Beetlezoid is from. You can see me just filling out the scene here by adding in a few more bushes in the background. There's also a nice tree to go with it before we add the Beetlezoid himself. Not actually as aggressive as they may look, although I've never actually met one so I can't confirm this. You can see he's holding a nice little bag ready to harvest his purple berries. The Blacktron mutant is up next, which means we are going back into space. You may wonder, why am I pushing him along the ground, moving all the rocks? It is because he is on a base plate and I didn't want that base plate in the photo. I wanted to make sure it was covered up by all the rocks. As you can see, we're adding in a few larger rocks in the background before yet again we're making the most of the floating ones. We are going to be making a few edits to this scene, so it is going to look slightly different to what you're seeing now, but let's go check it out. We're on to our penultimate scene now, which is the nurse android, who does come with a very cute baby minifigure. Now yes, this is a very simple scene, but I wanted it to tell more of a story. We have the nurse android here being quite surprised as to what she put in the milk to cause the baby to fly, and meanwhile you have the parent watching on with a very, as you can tell, expressive smile. So much emotion in that face. But yeah, here's the scene. Pretty sweet, pretty simple. Let's check it out. Last up is the Orion minifigure, who I think is a really cool and unique LEGO minifigure. A great use of transparent parts, and the glitter is just a cherry on top. This photo was a bit of a challenge considering he was somewhat transparent, which meant that there was a possibility that you could see the craft wire through his legs. Thankfully, it's not too visible. Overall, I really liked making this scene. It was quite simple but very effective. So we've successfully created all 12 scenes for the LEGO Series 26 Space CMFs. Let me know which was your favourites in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to hit that like button. And if you're new around here, maybe hit subscribe, it'd really mean a lot. And as always, thanks for watching.